Ladies and gentlemen, I first of all would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak on this very important occasion to commemorate the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I would like to say that my talk is about the significance of the massacre of Karbala. I would like to draw your attention to some important issues that I feel are relevant to understand the significance of the massacre of Karbala for our society today. First of all, may I ask, is it all right? Are you following my talk? It's not too fast. I'm not speaking too fast. به فارسی هم میتونم حرف بزنم که دروغ بگم. Now, the killing of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, along with dozens of his family members and followers at Karbala on the 10th of محرم in the year 61 Hijri, or the date, of course, famously known as Ashura, is an event that has the greatest significance for humanity for several reasons. And one of the reasons, I want to just very quickly quote from Dr. Ali Shariati, his book on Hajj. Dr. Shariati says, the fact that Imam Hussein left Makkah for Karbala, where he was martyred before completing his Hajj duties, taught us a more important lesson than martyrdom. Hajj was a duty that all his ancestors struggled for. Blood was shed to vitalize this tradition. He did not finish the ceremonies and decided to leave and to become a shaheed. He did not complete his Hajj in order to teach the Hajj makers, those who pray and have faith in Ibrahim's tradition, that if there is no imamat and there is no true leadership, if there is no goal, if Hussein is not there and Yazid is there, making tawaf around the house of Allah is equal to making tawaf around the idol house. The people who continue their tawaf while he went to Karbala were no better than those who were doing tawaf around the green palace of Muawiyah. It's a very important lesson, a very important point made by Dr. Ali Shariati about the significance of Imam Hussein leaving Hajj and not completing his Hajj because of a more important duty. Now, what I would like to do in my talk is to mention to discuss the connection between Karbala and the problem of leadership in the Muslim world today. Now, if we look at the Muslim world today, you find that there are many problems, of course. Many problems of political development, economic development, and even social problems. Now, whatever the problems are, the most important problem is the problem of leadership. I think we'll all agree that leadership ultimately is the most important problem, because when you have bad leaders, then you have difficulty of solving our problems. When you have good leaders, you have good bureaucracy, you have efficient government, and you have more efforts to solve problems. Now, in order for a leader to be a good leader, first of all, he should have a good morality, a good akhlaq. But it is also important for a leader to have the examples of leaders before him. And you know, this is what we mean by this idea of ideals of excellence. I think if you see the translation there, it says, I think it says Arman Aye Mutali, right? So I think you understand what I mean, the ideals of excellence. Then we find that the great leaders in history, the great sultans, the great wazirs, the great politicians in history were inspired by leaders that came before them. And this point of inspiration is very important, because when you are inspired by great leaders, you will learn how to lead. You will be inspired, you will be encouraged to do good works in your role as a leader. So this ability to be inspired and this search for examples to follow, the search for examples of excellence in leaders before you is a very important quality for leaders to have. But the problem is, do leaders search for ideals of excellence, or do they search for ideals of destruction? In other words, the question that we must ask our leaders today, Malaysia, in other countries, in other Muslim countries, the question is, do you want to be like Hussein, or do you want to be like Yazid? You know, as George Bush the first said, you are either with us or you're against us. So when it comes to Hussein and Yazid, either you are for Hussein and you are for Islam, or you are against Islam. Because it's not a matter of interpretation, it's not a matter of point of view or ideological perspective, it is simply a matter of right and wrong. So, in other words, the question we are asking is, do leaders today have Imam Hussein as their ideal of excellence? And we can also ask, you know, do they have Imam Ali as their ideal of excellence, and so on and so forth. Now, when we look at history, see, this concept of ideals of excellence is something that was first discussed by my late father, who was a Malaysian sociologist, and in his writing, he said that there were four types of leadership. Four types of leadership which will help us to understand these ideals of excellence. Now he said, for example, now these types of leadership are taken from examples of different leaders. For example, if you look at the example of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, Qaramallahu wajhu, he is an example of a leader guided by the ideal of excellence. His life was an example for others to follow. Leaders such as Sayyidina Ali display various characteristics that are very necessary for just and fair rule. in his personal life, he did not accumulate wealth, he did not become rich, he did not abuse his power, he did not oppress the weak, he did not act in an arbitrary manner. In other words, his action was guided by the ideal of excellence. And you could say that the form of rule, if we were to explain the form of rule in modern terms, the form of rule of Imam Ali is a republican form of rule, based on adherence to rules and regulations, and even he himself as a ruler is subjected to the same rules and regulations as the rest of society. But then, you know, you have examples of, you have other examples of leaders who show the ideals of excellence. For example, you have the famous Sultan Salahuddin Ayyubi, and then you have the Khalifa Omar ibn Abdul Aziz. I think Omar ibn Abdul Aziz is very well known to you because it was this Khalifa who stopped the practice of la'nat to the family of the Prophet during the Friday khutbah during the Umayyad period. So leaders like Sayyidina Ali, like Omar ibn Abdul Aziz, like Salahuddin Ayyubi, and then also the nephew of Salahuddin Ayyubi by the name of Malik al-Kamil, who was the Sultan of Egypt. These are examples of leaders who are guided by the ideals of excellence. Now, if we look specifically at the case of Imam Hussein at Karbala, we need to understand the opposite of the ideals of excellence. The opposite of the ideals of excellence is the ideals of destruction. The ideals of destruction. Now, the ideals of destruction, or the leaders who are guided by the ideals of destruction, prevent the ideals of excellence to grow in a society. Now, if you examine the caliphate of Yazid bin Muawiyah bin Abu Sufyan, you find that he belonged to the group of leaders guided by the ideals of destruction. In other words, their way of life and their behavior is destructive to life around them. The atrocities committed in the desert of Karbala on Ashura were instances of the conflict between good and evil. In this conflict, Imam Hussein and his followers displayed their ideals of excellence founded on religion, while the ideals of destruction were represented by Yazid. Now, I don't want to go into too many details about what happened in Ashura, in Karbala, because these are things that you know very well, you know better than me, in fact. But let me just mention that when Yazid became Khalifa, after his father Muawiyah died, the inhabitants of Syria gave the bay'at, you know, the oath of allegiance to Yazid. But many of the inhabitants of Medina refused to give their bay'at to Yazid. And of course, the most important of them was Sayyidina Hussein. And for that reason, the people of Kufa promised to give their support to Hussein, and they requested him to join them. So he set out on a journey to go to Kufa with members of his family and his companions. And while on the way to Kufa, as you very well know, the people of Kufa withdrew their support for Imam Hussein, possibly because they were put under pressure from Yazid and some of them feared for their life and so on. So they withdrew their support. At the same time, the governor of Kufa, by the name of Ubaidillah ibn Ziyad, was instructed by Yazid to send a few thousand, I think about 4,000 people of the army, led by Umar ibn Sa'ad, to intercept and to to move against the Imam Hussein at Karbala. And then of course, the events that led finally to the death and the killing, to the murder of Imam Hussein. Now, what I want to really discuss is what is the meaning of this. The conflict between Imam Hussein and Yazid was an historical manifestation of the conflict between two value systems. Conflict between two value systems. One value system, as I said, is based on the ideals of excellence, and the other value system on the ideals of destruction. Now, it was impossible for Imam Hussein to give the bay'at to Yazid. Yazid was an immoral man who blatantly violated the teachings of Islam, and in fact he violated the teachings of all religions, not just Islam. Now, one of the scholars of Islam, Sunni scholar, Ibn Kathir, had said of Yazid that he was often found drunk, was given to a decadent lifestyle, and he was also believed to be involved in several cases of murder. According to As-Suyuti, famous historian, Jalaluddin Suyuti, in his Tarikh Khulafa, Yazid was responsible for the Harra incident, in which several Sahaba of the Prophet and their children were killed. For all these reasons, it was impossible for Sayyidina Hussein to give the oath of allegiance, the bay'at, to a man like Yazid. If Hussein had given the bay'at to Yazid, it would be said until today that the grandson of the Prophet gave bay'at to a corrupt man. And the Muslims until today would put their heads down in shame because they would not be able to explain to the world why did the grandson of the Prophet give bay'at to a murderer and to a bad man. So we are fortunate that Imam Hussein gave his life for a very important cause and for teaching us the good values of justice and morality. Now, the massacre of Karbala is an event that Muslims cannot be neutral about, whether you are Sunni or you are Shia. Nothing to do with that. We are either on the side of the universal values. We are either on the side of universal moral values and take the side of Hussein, or we take a position that is not only contrary against the teachings of Islam, but all the great religions of the world and all the humanistic ideologies of the world. Our position with regard to Ashura should have nothing to do with the school of thought that we belong to or our political philosophy. Both Sunnis and Shias ought to be united with regard to the position that we take regarding Ashura. There may be a difference over how we commemorate Ashura, but this is not an important issue. But there should be no difference in terms of our attitude towards Ashura. It should also be pointed out that what is significant about Ashura is not that Imam Hussein was from the Ahlul Bayt. Of course, it is important that Imam Hussein was from Ahlul Bayt, but even if Imam Hussein was a slave, even if he was, not a member of the household of the Prophet, he was a slave, or he was a simple trader, the fact that he gave his life for such a cause, that he refused to give the bay'at, and even if it meant losing his life, that should be something that we must see the value of, that he gave his life for a noble cause. His sacrifice and his martyrdom would have been of no lesser importance if he was from any other family and not the family of the Prophet. Finally, if we are to make productive use of the history of Ashura and of the shocking and terrible actions of those who claim to be Muslims, we should relate them to our present context. It's very important, I feel, to relate what happened in Ashura to our situation today in the Muslim world. We should ask politicians. In fact, about 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, I gave a talk in Kuala Lumpur, a public talk to Malaysians. All the audience were Malaysians, about 100 Malaysians, about this. The talk was in Malay, it was in the Malay language. It was about this. And this was, at the end of the talk, my question was, or what I said was, we must ask our politicians to seriously think about their ideals of excellence. Do they want to be like Hussein, or do they want to be like Yazid? This is the lesson from Karbala that we can give to our leaders today. As Dr. Shariati said, this is a quote from Dr. Shariati, seek the leadership of Ali and flee from the leadership of cruelty. And run away from the leadership of cruelty. Remember Ashura to humiliate the ruling group who call themselves the inheritors of the tradition of the Prophet. For the remembrance of it will prove that they are the inheritors of the killers and murderers of the Prophet's family. This is something that Dr. Shariati wrote in the famous little book called Red Shiism. Right? Now Shariati then goes on to say that the remembrance of Ashura will provide the answers to an important question. If you remember Ashura, you will have the answer to a question. Now, what is that question? Now that question, as Dr. Shariati says, what should be done? What should be done? It will help in the decision on the form of the struggle against the rule of tyranny. It will avoid allegiance to cruelty. It will design the unbroken continuity of history. It will declare an uneasing struggle between the inheritors of Adam and the inheritors of the devil. Ashura recalls the teachings of this continuing fact that the present Islam today, is a criminal Islam in the dress of tradition. Of course, he's referring not to the deen of Islam, he's referring to the understanding of Muslims. That's the criminal Islam in the dress of tradition, and that the real Islam is the hidden Islam, hidden in the red cloak of martyrdom. Very important, very significant statement of Dr. Shariati. Now, I want to just to make a few points by way of conclusion. Now, the next few things I'm saying, they are not the translation, because this is something I'm just saying now. I think I want to make two important, what I feel are important points about Karbala. You know, you have been living, some of you have been living in Malaysia for many years, I suppose. Some of you maybe 10 years, is that right? Maybe 10 years, 5 years, some less time. For many of you, this is the first time you are living in a Sunni country, I suppose. Now, you know that during the month of محرم, most of the Sunnis do not remember about Ashura. They don't remember about Karbala. They remember other things. And this is in many Sunni countries. For example, in Turkey during Ashura, they have a celebration, and they make this kind of shorba, a kind of I don't know what you call it in Farsi, a kind of ash, a sweet ash, with all kinds of beans in it, and they call that shorba ash. They call it Ashura. They call it Ashura. And why do they do this? Because they say they are celebrating many things, like some events concerning Nabi Ibrahim, some events concerning Nabi Dawood, some events concerning Nabi Noah, when the ship of Nabi Noah found land, things like that. They said they celebrate so many things, but the only thing they don't mention is remembering Karbala. Why is that? It is because when the Bani Umayyah came to power, and after the event of Karbala, the leaders of the Bani Umayyah made the people forget about Karbala. They tried to make the people forget about Karbala. So after years and decades and centuries, people remember Ashura. They remember the date Ashura, but they created a lot of propaganda about what happened on that day. They created traditions, they invented ideas, until the people forgot about Karbala. So this is the problem with the Sunnis. The Sunnis have historical amnesia. You know what amnesia is? Amnesia is when people forget. We have historical amnesia. We forgot about Karbala. But if I may say so, I think the Shias also have a problem with Karbala. And this problem is that it became so emotional until they forgot about reality. It became so emotional and divorced from reality. These are two extremes. Two extremes. There are some other things, but I think it's not easy to explain all these things in a talk like this. But maybe I will just say this. If you want to attract Sunnis, to make them understand about Karbala, you cannot attract them through the emotionalism in the way you commemorate Karbala, because that makes them scared. They don't understand these things, you see? So that's what I'm saying. There is a big gap between the two groups. My second point is this, that today in the world, we have a separation between the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah and the Shia. How to bring the two together? The separation is caused by politics, by international politics. It is caused by political alignments between certain countries in the world, and it's caused by the struggle between different forces to control the Middle East. You all know what these things are. It is also caused by misunderstandings that Shias have about Sunnis and misunderstandings that Sunnis have about Shias. Sometimes the misunderstandings are very funny. For example, many Sunnis ask whether it's possible for Sunni to marry Shia. In other words, is it allowed in Islam for a Sunni to marry a Shia? They don't realize that, there's no law in Islam. The marriage of Shafi'i to Ja'fari is the same as the marriage of Shafi'i to Hanafi, or a Maliki to a Hanafi. It makes no same kind of rights and procedures. So, but many people have misunderstandings. And in Iran also you have, Shias who think that, it's not possible to marry a Sunni. That she must convert to Shiism and then you can have a marriage. So there are misunderstandings and many other misunderstandings about. Many Sunnis think that Shias have their own Quran. This Quran is not 100% the same as Sunni Quran. Many Sunnis think that you have your own Quran. And so many other misunderstandings. How to bring the two groups together? I believe that the best way to bring the two groups together is to talk about the Ahl al-Bayt, to talk about the household of the Prophet, especially to talk about Imam Ali and to talk about Imam Hussein. Because even the Sunnis love the Ahl al-Bayt, especially the Sufis among the Sunnis. They love the Ahl al-Bayt. And this is something that can be a point of unity. That in countries like Malaysia, there should be more activities, more seminars, more talks, more religious functions that bring more information and knowledge to Malaysians about Imam Hussein, about Imam Ali, so that they can develop an appreciation for the perspective and the point of view of the Shi'i community. And this is very important for us. In fact, your presence here in Malaysia, having Iranians here in Malaysia, is very important. Because now, over the last few years, we are seeing even Malaysians becoming Shia, as you know. So it's more important for Malaysian Muslims to understand more about Shiism. And now, also, we are having many Malaysians who have Iranian mothers or Iranian fathers and Malaysian mothers or fathers, because you have many marriages between Iranians and Malaysians. And their children, we have now, many of them have children. Their children are growing up, they are big. And what does the children of Iranian-Malaysian marriage become? Are they Sunni or they Shia? What do you think? Actually, they are what we call it sushi. Sushi. You have gone to Japanese restaurants, you have eaten sushi, right? Yeah. Myself, my children, my wife is Iranian, my children are, I don't know what they are. To me, it doesn't matter what they are. But what's important is, they want to be Shafi'i, they want to be Ja'fari, it doesn't matter. But what is important is, they understand the values. They understand Karbala. They remember Karbala. That is the most important thing. And this is how we must talk to Shias and how we must talk to Sunnis, to bring the two groups together. And inshallah, I hope that you in Malaysia, you will help us to do this, to play this role, to bring the two groups together. Because, we have a dua, we say, we have a kind of salawat. Salawat is something like this. Alhamdulillah bi dhikrihi tatma'inul qulub wa salatu wassalam ala sayyidina wa habibina Muhammadin an-Nabil mahbub wa ala alihi wa man ilayhi mansub. Now, this part, wa man ilayhi mansub, giving salawat to man ilahi mansub, the ones who are descended from him. Now this man ilahi mansub doesn't only mean those who are descended by blood, by nasab, not by nasab, by blood. It also means those who are descended from him by the akhlaq. For example, the Prophet referred to Salman Farsi as Ahlul Bayt. Of course, he is not nasab by blood, but in terms of his akhlaq, his morality, he is part of the family of the Prophet. So similarly, all Muslims must be mansub of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. Not by blood, but at least by akhlaq and by morality and by their ideology. And this is what we want to achieve, to make everybody mansub from the Prophet in terms of the akhlaq and their religion. Inshallah, we pray that we will be able to achieve this, and we use occasions such as Ashura and such occasions in order to achieve something good for our society, inshallah. Ameen. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.